The Sánchez Highway killer, the deception, before the massacre. A crime can shake a family, but there are some that shake an entire nation. In 2018, the Dominican Republic woke up to the news of a massacre that seemed unthinkable. A mother and 3 children murdered inside their own home at kilometer 8 of the Sánchez Highway. The perpetrator wasn't a stranger, nor an armed intruder. It was someone who shared a roof, affection and trust with his victims, Víctor Alexander Portorreal Mendoza, known as Chakra Shaman. The deception of the child. The tragedy began with a cold and calculated plan. Portorreal knew he had to get one of the children out of the house to carry out his macabre act. He approached 9-year-old Reyna Isabel Encarnación and told him that his sister was lost. With that lie, he convinced him to go with him. He left the little boy at an aunt's house, assuring him that he would soon return with the supposedly missing girl. When the woman asked why the boy kept saying one of his sisters was missing, Portorreal invented another excuse. "We already found her at a grocery store. Her mother has her to fix her." With this lie, he covered his tracks, concealing what had already begun inside the home. The crime while Reyna was safe. Reyna Isabel Encarnación Morales, 32, and her daughters Angela Bodden Encarnación, 6, and Daniela Bodden Encarnación, 10, remained in the house. Portorreal first attacked Reyna, the woman he publicly called the love of his life. He then murdered the girls in an act of brutality that horrified the entire country. The details revealed by the investigation describe a devastating scene: defenseless bodies, broken innocence, a home transformed into a scene of horror. The confessions. After committing the crime, Portorreal began communicating with acquaintances. He called his boss at the auto repair shop where he worked and confessed what he had done. Between incoherent phrases and nervous laughter, he said, "I killed the love of my life, and she loved me with all her soul. And so did I. It was a perfect love. No fights. What a sad story." He requested that his funeral be accompanied by motorcyclists, with an escort of all the bikers who decide to attend. Amidst mockery, he added, "I don't trust anyone right now. Everyone wants to save me, but that's not going to happen. I'm leaving this damn world. See you." These words reflected a man who mixed pride with resignation, as if he wanted to turn a tragedy into a macabre spectacle. Shocking testimonies. The aunt who took in the child confirmed to authorities how Portorreal manipulated Reyna to remove him from the home. That action, although calculated, was what saved the boy's life. The children's grandmother recounted something even more disturbing. The perpetrator's treatment of his victims seemed affectionate. She said he had a special relationship with the youngest, Angela. He called her "my little nerd," carried her in his arms, and frequently sought her out where relatives lived. This contrast between the apparent affection and the subsequent violence left everyone baffled. A close friend of Reyna's told the prosecutor's office that she had confessed something disturbing. Portorreal had done something very big to her, but she never wanted to reveal what. This incomplete confession fuels speculation to this day about the type of abuse or psychological pressure Reyna may have suffered in silence. A man without a criminal past. The most disconcerting thing was that, despite the magnitude of the crime, Portorreal had no police record. His record was clean. No complaints, no criminal record. For many, this detail made the brutality with which he acted even more incomprehensible. He was an ordinary man with a job, family ties, and no record of prior violence. But in a matter of hours, he became one of the most hated killers in the Dominican Republic. Solitude after the arrest. After being arrested, Portorreal was taken to the National Police Palace and later to the Palace of Justice in Ciudad Nueva. What was surprising was the reaction of his own family. No one came to see him. Neither his parents nor other relatives visited him during the interrogations. He remained alone, wearing the same clothes he was arrested in, eating only what the authorities gave him. This isolation demonstrated the absolute rejection of those close to him. The story of Víctor Alexander Portorreal Mendoza combines deceit, coldness, and contradictions. He tricked a child to keep him away from danger, murdered the woman he called the love of his life, and 2 girls he claimed to adore. Then he confessed with a mixture of pride and cynicism, requesting a funeral accompanied by motorcyclists. The entire Dominican Republic was paralyzed. What drove a man with no criminal record to commit one of the most horrendous acts in the country's recent history? The answers would be found in the interrogations, in the testimonies, and in the psychology of a man who went from being seen as a loving father to being labeled a monster. The mind of the killer. A man who held his partner's youngest daughter in his arms, calling her "my nerd" with apparent tenderness, became that same girl's executioner. How can we explain this transformation? Who was Víctor Alexander Portorreal Mendoza really? What was going through his mind that a life without a criminal record could end in one of the most brutal crimes in the Dominican Republic? This section delves into the psychological profile of the perpetrator, his life before the crime, the contradictions in his character, and the signs of an emotional imbalance that at first glance no one saw coming. Life before the crime, Víctor Alexander Portorreal, known as Chamán Chacra, led a seemingly normal life. Age 30 at the time of the crime. Residence, Santo Domingo. Occupation, worked in a mechanic's shop. Criminal record, none. His police record was clean. He was part of an urban subculture linked to motorcycling and so-called bikers, hence his macabre request that his funeral be attended by motorcyclists. Socially, he did not stand out as a troublemaker. Those who knew him described him as calm and sociable. However, beneath that surface lurked an unstable man. A two-faced subsequent testimonies revealed a contradictory personality. With the children's mother, Reyna Isabel Encarnación, he appeared to be ideally loving. He called her the love of my life. With the girls, he displayed closeness, especially with the youngest, Angela, whom he frequently held and cuddled. But Reyna had confessed to a friend that he had done something very big to her. She never revealed exactly what, but made it clear that she didn't feel completely safe. This contrast between apparent tenderness and hidden violence is typical of narcissistic and manipulative profiles, people who build a charming facade, but in private reveal a much darker side. Narcissism in his own words. After the crime, Portorreal didn't flee quietly. He left messages that show how he perceived himself. I killed the love of my life, and she loved me with all her soul, and so did I, a perfect love, without arguments. What a sad story. I don't trust anyone right now. Everyone wants to save me. That's not going to happen. I'm leaving this damn world. These statements reveal a clear narcissistic streak. Even after murdering 4 people, he talked about himself, his pain, and his funeral. His focus wasn't on what he had done, but on how he would be remembered. Isolation after capture. After being arrested, Portorreal lived in absolute isolation. His parents didn't visit him. No family member came to see him at the police station or the Palace of Justice. He spent days in the same clothes, receiving only food from the authorities. This total rejection by his family reflects not only the seriousness of his crime, but also the recognition that there was no longer any connection that justified it. He had become a pariah. Psychological profile. The forensic psychologists who analyzed his case highlighted several traits. 1. Manipulation. Oh, he deceived the child to remove him from the scene. Oh, he lied to the aunt about the girl's supposed disappearance. Oh, he showed a knack for inventing quick stories to cover his tracks. 2. Emotional coldness. Oh, he was able to murder the woman and 2 girls without showing immediate remorse. Oh, he communicated with third parties with laughter, as if seeking attention rather than atonement. 3. narcissism, and theatricality. Oh, his request for a funeral with bikers is an example of how, even in death, he wanted to be the center of attention. Oh, he described himself as part of a perfect love, while he himself was the one destroying it. 4. Possible covert psychopathy. Oh, the absence of a history of abuse does not mean the absence of signs. It's possible there were patterns of manipulation and emotional violence that were never reported. Oh, the fact that Reyna insinuated he did something really big to me suggests that there was already a history of abuse in the relationship. The unspoken trauma. One of the most disturbing pieces is Reyna's silence. She confessed to her friend Crystal Tejeda that Portorreal had done something irreparable to her. But she never wanted to say what. That silence can be interpreted as fear, shame, or resignation. Many victims of emotional or sexual violence remain silent for fear of retaliation or not being believed. In retrospect, that detail was a warning sign that went unnoticed. The social mask. In the community, Portorreal maintained the image of an ordinary man, a hard worker who loved his family. No one associated him with a potential murderer. This contrast is part of the impact this crime generated. This wasn't a repeat offender, but someone who had camouflaged his inner demons until one day they exploded. The trigger. What could have triggered the crime? The hypotheses considered include jealousy, a possible suspicion of infidelity, financial conflicts, tensions over money within the home, emotional breakdown, the fear of losing Reyna and, with her, the family structure that kept him stable. The truth is that early morning, Portorreal made the conscious decision to end it all, and he did so with disproportionate violence. Reyna and Isabel's mother, the grandmother of the murdered children, appeared at the trial. Her testimony was devastating. "I trusted him. My grandchildren trusted him. I never thought a man who held the youngest girl and called her my little nerd could be capable of killing her. I asked for justice because he took away everything I loved." Every word resonated in the courtroom, bringing tears to even those accustomed to hearing about criminal cases. Media coverage. The press dubbed the case the Sánchez Highway massacre. Television programs, newspapers, and radio stations analyzed every detail. Some invited psychologists spoke of a narcissistic and manipulative profile. Social leaders denounced the case as a reflection of the problem of femicide in the country. Feminist organizations held vigils in front of the Palace of Justice with banners that read, "Not one more." The trial wasn't just against an individual, it was against a structural form of violence that had already claimed hundreds of women's lives in the Dominican Republic. Key evidence. The public prosecutor's office presented a solid case. The testimony of the boy Rahamin, who recounted how Portorreal deceived him by telling him that his sister was missing. The statement of the workshop manager, whom the defendant called after the crime to confess what had happened. The texts and calls in which Portorreal was heard describing the incident as if it were part of a tragic love story. The testimony of Reyna's friend, who revealed that she had confessed to him that he had done something very big to her some time ago. Each piece of evidence further closed the circle around Portorreal. The defendant's behavior. During the hearings, Portorreal appeared cold, even indifferent. He didn't cry, he didn't get upset. Sometimes he lowered his head, other times he laughed nervously. This attitude increased public outrage. Many saw it as a mockery, as proof of his lack of remorse. National outrage, Dominican society erupted in protests. For many, this crime represented the worst of a country struggling with high rates of femicide and child abuse. Marches in Santo Domingo and other provinces demanded exemplary sentences. The clamor was unanimous. Life imprisonment or the maximum penalty. The sentence, after weeks of hearings, the court issued its verdict. Víctor Alexander Portorreal Mendoza was sentenced to 30 years in prison, the maximum sentence established in the Dominican Republic at the time. The courtroom erupted in applause, shouts and tears. It wasn't enough to bring Reyna and Isabel or the three children back to life, but for the family and society, it was a partial relief. Reactions after the sentence. The victims' families expressed that although justice had been served, their pain would never end. The public prosecutor's office stated that this case should serve as an example of the commitment to prosecute femicides to the fullest extent of the law. Public opinion continued to debate the need for legal reforms, including life imprisonment or harsher measures for repeat offenders. Media reflection. The case continued for months. Documentaries, reports, and special programs analyzed every angle. The manipulation of the child, the coldness of the accused, the lack of a criminal record. It became a case study in universities and criminology courses, as an example of how a seemingly ordinary man could transform into a serial killer without leaving any prior signs. The trial of Víctor Alexander Portorreal Mendoza was not just a judicial process. It was a reflection of an outraged society, of a country demanding justice, and of a devastated family searching for answers. The verdict was clear: guilty. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. But beyond the sentence, what remained was the mark of a crime that revealed the vulnerability of women and children to violence. The Dominican Republic will never forget the Kilometer 8 massacre, the legacy of horror and final reflections. Some stories don't end with a sentence. Even if a court hands down a conviction, the scars remain in the collective memory. The case of Víctor Alexander Portorreal Mendoza, alias Shaman Chakra, was not just a case of multiple femicides. It was a mirror that showed the vulnerability of women and children in the Dominican Republic, and a warning about what happens when silence and violence coexist in the same home, the loneliness of the murderer. After the sentencing, Portorreal was transferred to the San Pedro de Macorís Correction and Rehabilitation Center. There, he began his new life as a convicted inmate. Unlike other cases where family members visit the accused, this one did not happen. His parents never came. No cousin, uncle, or brother visited him. He spent his days receiving only food from the prison. The man, who in his imagination wanted a funeral full of motorcyclists, had ended up in the most absolute abandonment, repudiated even by those who shared his blood. The symbolism of his crime. The murder of Reyna Isabel Encarnación Morales and her 3 children became a national symbol for several reasons. 1. The brutality of the act. 2. It was not a single crime of passion, but a multiple act that wiped out an entire family in a matter of minutes, hours. 2. Manipulation of the surviving child. The coldness with which he deceived Rahamin, fabricating the story of his lost sister, showed a chilling level of calculation. 3. Narcissistic discourse. His confessions spoke more about himself, his funeral, and his pain than about what he had done to his victims. The lack of a criminal record. For many, the most disturbing aspect was his lack of a criminal record. He was a man who was clean before the law, yet capable of committing a monstrous act. An outraged country, the crime sparked profound debates in the Dominican Republic. Femicides. Organizations denounced the case as the tip of the iceberg, noting that dozens of women die each year at the hands of partners or ex-partners. Child protection. Stronger policies were demanded to prevent violence against minors within their own homes. Exemplary justice. Many criticized the maximum sentence of 30 years, arguing that a crime of such magnitude deserved life imprisonment or even the death penalty. Marches, vigils, and protests echoed for months, with banners reading, "Not one more," and "Justice for Reyna and her children." Remembering the victims. While the accused spent his days in prison, the country remembered the victims. Reyna Isabel, a 32-year-old woman who dreamed of giving her children a better future. Daniela, 10, who loved reading stories and wanted to be a teacher. Angela, 6, the girl he called my nerd, and who died at the hands of the man who claimed to adore her. Rahameen, 9, the only survivor thanks to the deception, who was forever marked by the burden of having been an indirect witness to the tragedy. The community didn't speak of the case as a number, but as a family suddenly torn apart. The media and collective memory. The case became a recurring theme in investigative programs, documentaries, and criminological analyses. Some used it as an example of how to detect signs of covert violence in relationships. Others as a reminder of the need to strengthen laws against femicide and domestic violence. Even years later, every time a new femicide occurred, Shaman Chakra's name reappeared in the headlines as a warning that society still hadn't resolved a profound problem. The echo in the judicial system Portorreal's sentence sparked debates about Dominican legislation. Is a 30-year sentence enough for a crime involving 4 lives? Should life imprisonment be implemented in cases of multiple femicides? How can preventive protection be guaranteed for women at risk? Although the law was fully applied, for many, justice fell short of the magnitude of the crime. Social reflection. The case left several lessons that remain relevant. 1. Silence can be deadly. Reyna confessed to a friend that he had done something very big to her, but never said anything in detail. That unspoken secret could have been a warning sign. 2. The attackers are not always visible. Portorreal had no criminal record. He was an ordinary, hard-working man. This shows that attackers can camouflage themselves under normal appearances. 3. The impact on survivors. Rahameen, the child tricked into saving him, will forever carry the memory of that lie and the impossible question, why did I survive and my sisters did not? The weight of oblivion. Today, years later, Portorreal continues to serve his sentence in social isolation. No one visits him, no one calls for him, no one remembers him fondly. His name is etched in the country's criminal history as a synonym for betrayal and horror. Meanwhile, the memory of Reyna and her children remains in the vigils, in the murals painted by feminist groups, and in the tears of a family that will never heal. The crime at Kilometer 8 wasn't just an atrocious act. It was a reminder that evil can hide behind a seemingly normal face, that violence can live silently in the home, and that victims often don't find a way out in time. Víctor Alexander Portorreal Mendoza, alias Chamán Chacra, killed those he claimed to love. He ended up in prison, alone, forgotten, rejected even by his own blood. But the real victims weren't him or his sentence, but Reyna and the 3 children whose lives were taken by someone they trusted. The country still remembers that crime as one of the darkest in its recent history, and the question remains, how many more Reynas and children must die before we learn to listen to the signs and stop the violence before it's too late?